Like, I love that Gandalf isn't. He doesn't mince his words. Like when he's angry, he's just gonna be angry. I shall roast him, and I don't think he means to burn him up.
There were once men, great kings of men.
And that's pretty much the whole scene with Aragorn. There's an entire chapter in the Fellowship of the Ring titled Strider.
With not only an entire chapter, but it has, in my opinion, the second most important poem in the book.
Yeah, good point. And we learn so much, not just about the Nazgul, but about Strider, about Butterbur, about Gandalf, that is completely removed from the films. And it disappointed me that this was what we got, their interaction with Strider essentially after when they come in, well, I'll have you, Longshanks. There's almost nothing there, and then they're immediately like sleeping in this area. Oh, and of course in the Strider scene, well, right after this, we missed the fear fire foes awake in Crick Hollow, where Fatty Bulger,
poor Fatty Bulger, got dissed again.
So out of this scene, I mean, there's a lot to be missed, and I don't think we can go through all of it. I think the biggest thing, one, you mentioned the poem. Two is the whole letter that. That to me, those to me are, and I guess that's part of the letter, but everything that's in the letter, and it determines, it lets you know what's happened to Gandalf, because up through here in the books, you've been wondering what's been going on, and clearly in the movies, they do it in the middle of the story. They don't tell you later in Rivendell exactly what happens, or have a letter to tell you that Gandalf should have been here, but really wasn't. And then also we have the whole scene with Merry and the Nazgul missing, or the recollection that happens in the book of Merry and the Nazgul.
Yeah, I break it down into basically four big differences, just to cover what we've been sort of talking around it, but just to real quickly do a summary of the changes. What are in fact, if someone's going to ask us, what are the differences between the book and the movie? They boil down to four things in my mind. One is Merry has a whole escapade where he's wandering around Braytown, and he runs into a Nazgul, passes out from the Black Breath, and is found by Nob, the Hobbit servant, and taken back to the Prancing Pony. So that's one. We miss the interaction between Strider and conversation between Strider and the hobbits in the parlor. And that includes Barlam and Butterbur coming in and him giving his opinion on Strider, and then Strider showing up and Barlam basically leaving. It includes the letter from Gandalf. Gandalf has left a letter, and he talks about Aragorn. And that letter has the second most famous poem after the ring inscription itself, which is, "All that is gold does not glitter, not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither, deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken, a light from the dark shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken, the crownless again shall be king."
And there's this, right? Wait. There's this.
"All that is gold does not glitter."
Yes. Yeah. An old subsection from our podcast is taken exactly from that passage, and it's a poem about Aragorn himself in a variety of aspects, and Aragorn confirms it by reciting part of the poem without seeing the words on the page, and so Frodo knows that he is indeed Aragorn, and then he talks a lot about, he gives them a lot of backstory, so there's a lot of that, and then so there's the loss of Merry's story, the loss of Barlam and Butterbur's interactions, the loss of Aragorn and the poem about him, and then finally there's the actual difference of, they weren't in a different building looking through a window at their old rooms. They were actually down the hall from their bedrooms, which did get trashed. Their bedrooms did get trashed by the Nazgul, though they don't see it. They just barricade themselves in the parlor for the night, and with Aragorn guarding them, and the hobbits sleep in the parlor. So, and that's the difference.
Well, and also we find out that Barleyman heard nothing. He wasn't cowering on the side next to his kitchen counter there, seeing the Nazgul come in, he's like, I didn't hear anything. It was silent the whole night, right? And so there wasn't this shrieking, screaming that they heard across the street either. But again, we're leaning into that whole idea of Bree being a dangerous, dastardly place, dark. Yeah. And so
Bree in the movies is basically under the thrall of evil. Bree in the books is not. The evil does have an impact. So, for example, the Nazgul, or the men working with the Nazgul, Bill Ferny and Harry Goatleaf, etc., do steal everyone's horses that's at the inn, but that's everyone, including the dwarves and the men from the south, etc. So evil has an effect, and they do break in the Nazgul do break in the window and trash their rooms. Although it's not really clear that it's the Nazgul that does that. Actually,
yeah, that's actually a good point.
It might be the men under the thrall of the Nazgul that break in through the window and trash the Hobbit bedrooms. But anyway, because we just don't see. But that part I don't have a problem with. It could have been the Nazgul. But definitely, like you say, there's no cowering Barlaman and no Bree under the thrall of the Nazgul. That's not accurate.
Yeah, and let me read to you the part that the only thing that it says about what happened to the rooms is this: as soon as Strider had roused them all, he led the way to their bedrooms. When they saw them, they were glad that they had taken his advice. The windows had been forced open. You would think if they were Nazgul, right, the windows wouldn't have necessarily been forced open. Maybe.
Well, because they do break the door at Crick Hollow, so they do.
That's a good point. That's true. Okay. All right. The windows had been forced open and were swinging, and the curtains were flapping. The beds were tossed about, and the bolsters slashed and flung upon the floor. The brown mat was torn to pieces. So it was a violent act, but you're right. It's never clear whether it's the Nazgul or, as we learn in the Strider chapter, that he explicitly mentions Bill Ferny as the guy to watch out for. It could have been him as well. So they take some liberties with the idea that we're going to show you exactly who it is, even though Tolkien never said so.
Right. And there's at least one man from the south, one Southron, who looks like a little orcish, and he's probably in the thrall of them. Probably others as well. Definitely, the gatekeeper was dominated by the Nazgul, because he's mentioned as being white, having a conversation with them and coming away white and shaking, and so he's so anyway, it could have been the human servants of the Nazgul, or thralls of the Nazgul, if you want to call them that. But anyway, it's never clear. Lots of changes, lots of little changes, but I think the biggest change is the whole character of Strider and his interaction with the hobbits, and the letter from Gandalf and the poem about Strider, about Aragorn.
I love this line about like that one. Gandalf puts in a bunch of PSs in his letter, which is what I did when I was like in junior high, when I'd send letters to people back in the day.
Yeah, me too.
I forgot about this. And his last one is, I hope Butterbur sends this promptly. A worthy man, but his memory is like a lumber room. Thing wanted, always buried. A lumber room is like an attic or a storage location where you'd throw a bunch of stuff in there. If he forgets, I shall roast him. Like, I love that Gandalf isn't. He's just not. He doesn't mince his words. Like, when he's angry, he's just going to be angry. I shall roast him. And I don't think he means to burn him up, but his anger will be piqued to a degree that Butterbur will not like. And I missed that line. That's sort of it's even indicative of Gandalf's character, is that he left this letter and that he didn't leave them hanging, and that he trusted Butterbur. Butterbur broke his trust. And I miss, that's, to me, that's the biggest part that's missing, is that flavor of the relationships that you get even just from the letter. So
and Butterbur even says explicitly that Gandalf is a, quote, good friend of his. So that whole thing about like him, not the Butterbur of the movie, not knowing Gandalf or referring to him as just some sort of stranger is oh
yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's not a stranger. Absolutely right. Yeah, he's like, oh, old man, long beard, pointy hat. Not seen him in 6 months. Right. Right. No, that's not really Butterbur there.
That's not the Butterbur of the books.
Okay.
But anyway, the biggest loss, I still say, is the "All that is gold does not glitter" poem, and Gandalf's letter itself.
Yeah. The whole letter is the lost part, in my opinion. That part of it informs so much of what happens and what's happened to Gandalf when you get to Rivendell eventually to find out what's happened. So, okay. So let's take a look at this here. Is it lore friendly? Is it lore friendly to remove that, I will start and I will instantly say, no, I don't think it is lore friendly to do what they did, to remove that, because it does remove one, it removes, well, it removed Crick Hollow. I think that whole scene I think is great. I think it's not lore friendly to know that the Nazgul were still searching and not even near Bree at the time. Two, removing the poem, and I believe Bilbo wrote that poem, right?
Mm-hmm.
We learn later in Rivendell. Removing that poem is like removing the ring poem from the verse from the ring. It's so important, and you remove some of Gandalf's wonderful character in here, his friendly fieriness, even
Right.
just through the letter, and I feel like that's lost. So to me, it changes things a little too much to make it lore friendly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm a little closer to the edge on this one because of these are in one sense minor things to take out, but in another sense, the last book of the trilogy is not called The Destruction of the Ring. It's called The Return of the King. And Aragorn's character and who he is as king. This is the first time we're introduced to him as king, and as a lost king, and a king who's going to become a king again someday. And his character as someone deeply noble, not just a friendly ranger that's going to help them as a friend of Gandalf's or something, but a mighty warrior and hero in his own right, and a man of great importance. And I agree with you. We lose out Barliman and Gandalf's friendship. We lose off on Gandalf's letter itself and all the personality that it conveys. And in the end, I don't even think it would have taken that much time in the movie to do the letter. They could have done it in 60 to 90 seconds. But anyway,
Yeah, they could have added it. Okay, next question: does the change make for better cinema? Does the change make for better cinema? What do you think?
So this was a tough one for me because I'm balancing on this one. Like we said, yes, it made for better cinema last time because it saved so much time to not have, because they would have had to showed a lot of scenes of the hobbits entering the parlor, being taken in, their conversation with Barliman, their meals, then them going to the long room, and then the song. So that's why I landed on it makes for better cinema, because we're cutting out a lot of stuff. This change of Aragorn's character, I don't think it actually would have taken that much time. And so I'm going to say no on this. I don't think it makes for better cinema, because I think with a minor add, you could have added a lot of character. By the way, Jackson is very, very concerned with Aragorn's decision to return and be king. This could have been the springboard to introduce the idea of the crownless again being king. And Jackson's take would have been the reluctant king, right? The Aragorn not sure if he had what it took to become king. That he could have fit even his own take, which I don't agree with, but he could have even used the poem from Gandalf written by Bilbo, as you pointed out, to highlight this and introduce us to Aragorn as king, or as a potential king anyway. And he didn't. Yeah. So I think that this does not make for better cinema. I think much could have been gained from adding this keeping this character.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it would have taken a whole lot to add that in the scene, and to add, like you said, 30 to 30, 60, 90 seconds into a little bit more interaction. I think even having a little bit more with Barliman, and something jogs his memory that he does get the letter, just having it there instead of the choices that they made. This is one of those choices that they made when they wrote the script. And perhaps looking back, they're like, yeah, we probably could have, we probably didn't need to make that change right there, because it wasn't that much of it didn't have that much of an effect on the timeline of the entire movie, considering the movie's 3 hours long. So
exactly. I mean, how much would it have taken to just have Barliman remember the letter from Gandalf and give it and deliver it to Frodo, and then Frodo read a couple passages from it? Like, that just doesn't. And then Aragorn, so it just gives a new light to Aragorn, and it would have made more believable the Hobbit's quick, following of his instructions to stay out of their room, which ends up getting attacked. So anyway, I see it as a loss.
Yeah, and it makes it sense, like at this point, that he says make for Rivendell, and in the films it's Aragorn that says we're going to make for Rivendell, or make for no, in the books he says make for Weathertop. I think in the movie he does say we're going to head for Rivendell, to the House of Elrond, who will have the answers to the problems, etc., etc. Okay, how much do you like the change? So here's the thing: it was what they did was effectively done. If I wouldn't have known about what was in the books, So I won't say like it was a poorly done change. I thought, you know, it the fear of the Nazgul is made more acute by the scene that he added. But I don't like that you lose so much about the letter, about Gandalf, about Strider's character, about the Rangers, about Butterbur. Like there's so much that's lost. So I don't.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that, because I don't think that you could have done the fear of the Nazgul, and as he did it, and still kept the letter from Gandalf, and still kept the poem about Aragorn, and still kept Aragorn's introduction as the crownless king.
Yeah. So how much? Well, it's less than halfway, but it's probably a little bit more than last time. I think just because of the eye. The eye really messed me over when I saw that in the film. I'm going to go with the straight 2.0,
Yeah,
man.
I'm close. I'm 2.2 on this one. I like it even less than the previous change. Again, it's not a tragedy, but it's not great. So
Yeah.
could have been so much richer.
People are going to think we hate these movies.
We're approaching this in a different way. You and I have been from the beginning really saying like 3.0 is midpoint between on a 5-point scale. So if we're neutral about it, we're going to give it a 3. If we're in favor, we'll give it higher. If we're not in favor, we'll give it lower. And so the way we're doing the 5-point scale is just different from the way people usually approach 5-point scales.